We have our next speaker, Bhargav Dasgupta. He is Managing Director and CEO of ICICI Lombard General Insurance Company Limited. It's the largest private sector general insurance company in India. He has held key leadership positions in diverse business areas in the ICICI Group, including project finance, corporate banking, e-commerce and technology management, international banking, and life insurances. So now, we would like him to carry forward the session.
Thank you, Prasad, and thank you, IIT, for giving us this opportunity to present something about what we are doing in the technology space in insurance. This is a bunch of very smart engineers. I'm really a business person, but what I'll try to do is contextualize how we are trying to use some of these cutting-edge technologies to solve business problems. I think the previous speaker. So if you can just start with the first slide. So as I said, I'll focus on some of the areas that we are using technology to solve business problems, usually using IoTs, AI, ML, etc., advanced analytics. I think the previous speaker talked. There's one slide that I saw which is very, very appropriate, where she talked about how large enterprises which do not adopt and do not adapt to the new ways of working do not survive for the long term. And equally true is that the ones that do, really stay ahead and build a big lead with the rest. So, while we are not a tech company, but that's the attempt that we are making at ICICI Lombard. Now, this is something that, all of you would be, fully aware of, right? The prevalence of, some of these solutions in our lives. So if you see what's happening in each of this, I mean, and I don't need to explain any of this to you, but what, let's say, Alexa uses, the NLP to, convert speech to text and then look at text with appropriate context, enable geotagging to give you, and then do a search on tomorrow's weather to give you an answer to the question of what is the weather like tomorrow. Or what Google does, again, using some of the same tools to get device data from multiple consumers. Again, using an optimization algorithm to tell you which is the best route to take. Or, for example, Facebook's deep learning vision algorithm, which uses image-based image data and tags friends. Or what Amazon uses, which is their item-to-item collaborative filtering algorithm to give you recommendations based on your understanding you as a consumer and the type of books that you've read, and similar to what others do. So this is something that is there in all of our lives. We are experiencing it every single day. Now, one of the things that we believe has been tremendously transformative is this whole lockdown effect that we've had across the globe. And we are seeing a digital transformation being accelerated even further. Some of these things were happening, as we all know, but our belief is that this is getting transformed at an even faster pace. Some of the most, in a sense, traditional areas, I mean, for 5,000-6,000 years, human beings have learned in face-to-face environment. From the Guru Shishya days to classrooms where teacher would stand up and deliver training and teaching. That's also getting completely transformed. Largely forced due to the lockdown, but even otherwise, in terms of the benefits of some of these technologies that we are seeing today, and the experience that we've had in this last 8-9 months tells us that some of these things will be here to stay. And just a fun fact for all of you interested in getting into the startup area. In the last few years, we've had in India about 4,000 edtech startups, and the total funding that they've got has been close to about $2 billion. So it's not a small sector at all. Even though, as I said, traditionally this is not something that people believed would happen. So if you go to the next slide. Yeah, I think I've covered this. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so if you look at what's happening in terms of some of the other areas, when we look at the changes that is happening driven by these new technologies and how it's transforming problems that we never thought would be solvable, even 10 years back. So if you look at the changes that are happening on the ground, just an example of this Swedish company which launched a robotic lawn mowing, a robotic lawn mowing system. Now, lawn mowing, may seem very simple for a human being, but for a robot is very, very complicated. And this is a machine that actually mows lawns with even at about 70-degree incline, which is an incline where a skier doesn't ski down. He just does the cliff jump. So it's even at that level, this is a robo which is very, very effective. And by the way, the business that this company does is not small. This company is a $5 billion company, and roughly about 35% of their revenues come from the sales of these robotic lawnmowers. Next slide, please. So similarly, as we are seeing on the ground, even on the air, right? So if you, some of you would be aware, the first drone-based pizza delivery was done to a couple in New Zealand back in the year 2016, where Domino's delivered, a peri-peri pizza to this couple about 20 miles away from Auckland. So the changes that we are seeing is happening not only on the ground, but also, on air. If you can go to the next slide, please. So the question then is, why should insurance be left behind? Now, I don't know how much any one of you know about insurance or the history of insurance. Insurance industry is possibly the first industry which used data science. In our industry, we don't call them data scientists. Traditionally, we used to call them actuaries. And if you go back to history, the first solution to a problem that any industry used, where they used probability and statistics and data science, was to solve for the pension payout for widows in Scotland. So that is the genesis of the pension and the life sciences, life insurance industry. And similarly for non-life, there's been a lot of data analytics that has been used over the years to predict the losses and figure out whether the premium that we charge is adequate or not. So this has been traditionally an industry which has used data science, but in the last maybe 50, 60 years, it's not an industry that has seemed to be at the cutting edge when it comes to leveraging technology. As we speak, even today, the impression from outside is this industry using enough data and analytics to solve some of the key customer problems, particularly using the new age technologies that we talked about. So I'll just start with a small video about some of the things that we are doing at ICICI Lombard. If you can just play the video, please.
Accidents are always associated with stress, and insurance claims can be time-consuming. But not anymore. I've just damaged my bumper, but the claims process is no longer tedious. I'm using this new AI app to upload pictures for my insurance claim. It gives an accurate cost within seconds. Now I feel more prepared and confident when I go to the service center. Last year, when I had a cracked windshield, I had to take my car to the service center and wait in line. Then the engineer reviewed the damage and estimated costs manually. Later, the insurance inspector arrived to approve the cost, and only then could I go ahead with the repairs. The damage inspection process took a total of 2 to 3 days. By using the app, I can take my car for repair within a few minutes.
So this is a capability that our in-house data scientist team created. They've been working on this for a good 2 to 3 years now, and the challenge that I'm sure all of you understand better than me was really can be broken down to multiple levels, starting with looking at the quality of image. I mean, at times, the first basic problem is the quality of the image, the orientation of the camera. You have to guide the customer through that process, or flip it around. Identification of the damage part. The car that we are looking at. Which vehicle is this? Then once you've done that, then identification of the damage type. Whether it's a dent or a scratch or a crack. The extent of damage and the linkage to the relevant part. Is it a front bumper or a windshield or something else? Then a decision whether this can be repaired. Is it a big enough? Is it a large damage that needs repairing, or can it be that needs replacement, or can it be repaired? That's another decision that we have to take, and then figure out what is the appropriate cost that we have to pay for. So this is something that we, part of the solution we've already launched for customers, where we are identifying the damage and allowing some of the other processes to go through. And the actual repair estimate is now being given to our claims engineers, claims managers, to optimize and come to the right decision. So this is something that we are already doing as a company, based on the work that our data scientist teams have been working on for the last couple of years. If you could turn to the next slide. Yeah. So in terms of the other areas, in insurance, in general insurance, we do multiple types of insurance. Motor insurance is one of them. The second big part of our business is health insurance. And what happens in health insurance is you pay a small premium, and you hope that you don't fall sick. But unfortunately, if you do, you go to a hospital. In the hospital, to start treatment, they need authorization from the insurance company to validate whether the insurance policy is correct, whether these treatment costs are covered. So what they do is they typically fax some case papers and documents, etc., to the insurance company. Doctors in the insurance company looks at all the papers and then gives an authorization to start the treatment. Traditionally, this process takes 1 to 3, 4 hours in certain cases. For us, typically it would take about an hour. That's a process that now we've converted completely in using a deep learning solution, where the faxed document that comes in is digitized using an ICR OCR techniques. The ML algorithm looks at past data and authorizes the treatment if the treatment has to be authorized. If the engine believes that it shouldn't be authorized, then it gets transferred to an actual doctor, and the doctor then takes the final judgment call. And through that process, we are also training the engine to become better and better. So what used to take, as I said, an hour or a bit more, now gets done in 90 seconds. And obviously, it frees up our doctor's time to do more value-added work in terms of portfolio analytics, etc. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah. So if you see some of the other areas that some of these technologies, particularly IoT, I talked about, there's a lot of media talk and a lot of interest in terms of using telematics for motor insurance. Now that's something that that's very common, well known. And a lot of companies are trying it. We as a company are doing the same thing with as an experiment. We've actually been able to build driver scores in terms of driving quality scores based on the data that we get from the OBD devices, the IoT devices fixed on the car. And using that data, we've built an algorithm to figure out the quality of driving. And again, against that, we've correlated the experience of claims. And accordingly, we can actually use that data to price premium going ahead. Once some of this is regulatorily allowed in India, some experimentation has happened already in India, but the formal launch of these products are pending. But in the meantime, there is another business use case that we feel is even more powerful, which is for corporates. We also insure their the supply chain, right? When goods are transiting from one part of the country to another, if any damage happens, that's something that insurance companies pay for. And what we've done, just to give you a couple of examples, is let's say for today we are talking about the vaccine, right? It has to go through, it has to use a cold, cold supply chain, refrigerated cargoes, etc. So this is something that anyway pharmacy industry has been doing, maybe at a lower level of temperature, compared to the temperature that we are talking about for vaccine. But cold chain is something that is common in pharmacy industry. So with one of our corporate clients, what we've done is using an IoT device to track the track the entire supply chain. Now, what happens in India? I mean, these are the real ground level issues that you have to solve for. What happens in India is that a lot of times, the drivers optimize or conserve, the fuel. They're incentivized to conserve fuel. So at times they switch off the refrigeration unit to save on fuel, and we get immediately a trigger. And if that happens, the cargo can be damaged. So some of these devices that we have gives us an automatic trigger, and we call out to the driver, and ask him why has it switched off the refrigerant unit. So some of these solutions are not only helping in prevent losses, but it's also being expanded to give almost a logistics solution to some of our clients. One large metal company, we have kind of built a just-in-time inventory tracking system using some of these capabilities. Not only using GPS, but even triangulation of the towers using the SMS data. So these are some of the things that we've done. If you can go to the last slide. So again, going back to a example for health underwriting, I gave an example of the claims. What happens when a claim happens? But equally, when we issue a policy, we do what is known as underwriting. We ask questions of an individual and to get a status of the of how his health status in a sense. Traditionally, doctors would call and ask questions. Again, that's something that we've now been able to convert using an a voice bot and an NLP engine, which converts the speech into text. Again, there's an algorithm which looks at the text and the context, and then using the algorithm, we decide whether this case needs a human doctor to check, or we make it straight through for the customer to get the policy smoothly. So these are some of the examples of work that we are doing at ICICI Lombard within our teams, as also in partnership with some of the ecosystem that has come up in India, which I'm sure a lot of you would be aware of and you have friends in. But clearly, as a company, this has been a big focus for us. And this is not restricted to India. I mean, I'm talking about what we are doing in India, but globally, if you go to some of the accelerator programs or incubation centers, you'll see a lot of activity on the insurtech side. And in fact, in some of the places, insurtech is probably becoming bigger than fintech. And there's been a lot of innovation that has been happening globally in this space, including new startups that have come forth. There's one company which, if you're tracking the space, you would have heard about. This is one of the most successful IPOs in this year, in 2020. A company called Lemonade, which started just in 2017, and they've completely, they're trying to completely transform the way insurance is experienced by their customers. They're focused on one type of insurance in US. It's called renter's insurance. So when you rent a property, the insurance that you have to buy, it's similar to home insurance, but slightly lower scale. And if you go to the next slide, there's a video that I wanted to share with you. So if you can just play the video, please. So obviously, this is a completely AI first company. Everything that you saw happening on the mobile screen was happening without any human intervention. Even that video that you saw the customer, video of the customer being recorded, there is an engine behind based on the way she's explaining her claim. It can figure out the probability of a fraud, because that's something that in the insurance industry you have to work very hard to prevent. Because if fraud increases, the premium increases for the genuine customers. That's not something we want. So everything is really done using some of these, as I said, it's an AI first company. All of this is using artificial intelligence and ML tools. So that's what I wanted to talk about in terms of the adoption of technology and the way this technology is transforming insurance, not only in India, but across the world. If you go to the next slide. This is, a similar point that I wanted to make, right, that I made at the beginning. Our belief is that if you don't disrupt yourself, you'll get disrupted. And I think the best companies in every business, as also in insurance, is looking at how do we stay ahead of the curve in terms of adopting some of these tools and adapting to these new environment and adopting these tools. And lastly, again, as I said, I don't want to use this as a plug, but any one of you who is really interested in...
you showed in your presentation, we can claim insurance by taking pictures of the parts which are damaged or some things like that. So how is privacy taken into account in such cases?
Look, at the end of the day, we already have a relationship with you, right? So when it comes to privacy, we are not doing something that you don't give us an authorization to do. Number one, and if you think about what it does, is changes a physical process into a more convenient digital process. Let me explain this. So in the past, what you would do is that,
can you tell how the pandemic has affected your company and the insurance sector in general?
Look, so when it comes to the way this done is created greater awareness that unpredictable events happen, which we are not in control of. And that's what insurance is about, right? So all of us hope that, we won't have a car accident, but accidents do happen. All of us hope that we don't fall sick, but unfortunately people do fall sick. We all hope that there won't be a fire in my factory, but it so happens that they do happen. So, none of us want any of this to happen. As an insurance company also, we don't want you to fall sick, right? So in a sense, that's not possible because of some of these tools. So DIY, contactless services, just to give you an example of this video inspection that I'm talking about, our numbers, or let's say the claim authorization on the motor side, on the health side, our numbers, which was roughly about high 20s as a total percentage of claims that are going through that process, has gone to about more than 60% now. So that's the ramp up that we've seen in a matter of 6-7 months. So it's been a tremendously transformative event for everyone, and including for insurance.
There was also a question, can you tell how is the digitalization in India compared to the digitalization in the developed countries? So what are the strengths and weaknesses in both conditions?
Look, one of the things that, just let me start with an example that I shared in the presentation. So this entire, image AI solution that we developed in-house to solve for this claim assessment problem on the motor side. We initially looked at what was happening in the world. There was a global, startup which was looking at this, solving this problem. They were working with some American companies. They had come to India to look to see if they could solve the same problem for their JV partner in India, realized that the JV partner was too small, then they came to us. In the meantime, they had some problems. I'm not sure what happened, but they then decided not to proceed with the Indian market. In the meantime, we had started working on this in any case ourselves. And we said, we don't need any, maybe we can do this ourselves. And we built this piece. So in a sense, some of these tools are possible for anyone to create. One of the big advantages that we have is we have a much larger scope as a country at two levels. One, we have more data, period. We are 1.38 billion. And, if you've organized your data well, you've kind of tagged it well, you've stored it in the past, you have a lot more data than, because the volumes that we deal with in India is much, much higher. Secondly, this is potentially creating an opportunity for us to leapfrog. If you look at health, particularly health tech or health insurance or healthcare, we have an opportunity of using this, these capabilities or these technologies to leapfrog and become a much more for digital health, ecosystem in India than what the Western world would be. Simply because there are very strong entrenched legacy systems that are already built in. So breaking that may take some time. Here, you are almost solving a problem that healthcare is not even available to half the population. So you can solve it using the fact that we have more data points, as also the fact that we can do it much more cheaply at a low cost and solve a problem that is not being even addressed today by any other solution. But to answer your question of as of now, we see the real cutting edge work happening in China and thereafter to some extent in US. But really the guys who are leading this piece is China.
Sir, so like a personal tech question. So what appealed to you in this insurance background? And also where do you see this part in some 5 years down the line?
What excites me personally about insurance? Look, one of the things that I realized coming into insurance, I've been, when I came out of my business school, I joined Icici, and that was a banking role. But came into general insurance about 11 years back, almost 12 years now, in Icici Lombard in 2009. One of the things that I really enjoy about this industry is that if you're an engineer, there is a lot more connect to your core engineering in this industry. I mean, some of the things that I talked about in terms of using technology to solve problems, the opportunity in our industry is tremendous. I mean, in terms of solving risk problems for customers using technology. But even at a basic level, if you are an mechanical engineer, which I am, I've forgotten my mechanical engineering honestly, but if you're an automobile engineer, the depth of understanding that you need to be a good claim service provider is a deeper understanding of the engineering of the automobiles. Because you really need to understand the components, the parts, the sub assemblies, and figure out whether you can repair this, and there is some amount of engineering, understanding of engineering there. So there is a lot of technical inputs so this is a lot more of a techno financial industry rather than a pure financial industry. So that's one thing that I find it very exciting to be in this industry, and plus the scope to use technology to solve customer problem here is tremendous, honestly speaking. And the other question about where do we see this 5 years later? Look, our belief is that among financial services, an industry that I today understand because I've been in most part of the financial services, this industry probably has the longest runway of growth, because today it is still one of the it's in terms of penetration, it's way below, behind the curve. And this is natural, because what happens when as a society goes through its journey of affluence, data has shown that when per capita income of a country reaches about $2,000, the insurance penetration starts picking up. It's a S-shaped curve. It's kind of slow initially, then once it crosses $2,000, it rapidly increases and then plateaus after a point in time. And if you think about it from a consumer level, it is natural, because when you start becoming a bit more, when you have some spare, money, you start thinking of saving it, or you then think of buying an asset, maybe a car and then a home. And once you do all of that, then you think of protecting it. So it's a stage of evolution of every industry, and our industry in that sense has a longer runway of growth, is the belief that I have.
Thank you very much, sir, for the session. It was really wonderful interacting with you. And everyone, I hope enjoyed and got much info about ICICI.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.